Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent podcast. I'm Jim Weber, your host and guide through actual accounts of intriguing and fascinating true crime stories as told by the law enforcement professional that experienced the event. The Right to Remain Silent podcast makes no exaggeration of fact, doesn't glamorize details, or sensationalize reality. The format here is basic. Real stories from real cops. Lastly, please don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Doing this will help me continue to provide you, the listener, with captivating and relevant true crime stories. Now, let's listen in on today's episode. Hi, and welcome to the Right to Remain Silent True Crime Podcast. I am your host, Jim Weber, and today's guest is Barry Black, a retired FBI special agent who served more than 30 years in the Bureau. Barry worked assignments in white-collar or fraud cases. He was a sniper with the SWAT team. He worked as a bomb tech, working as an explosive specialist. And he was involved in some of America's most notorious investigations, cases like the Branch Davidian Waco investigation, the 9/11 terror attacks, the Oklahoma City bombing, and more. And we're going to discuss those here as we talk with Barry about his career. Also of interest, Barry wrote a book, and it's available now. The book's titled Hazardous Devices: Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper, which we're going to discuss in detail here towards the conclusion of our conversation. Barry, thank you very much. I'm incredibly fortunate to have you here on The Right to Remain Silent.
Oh, Jim, it's my pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And again, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I'm confident listeners are going to find your career fascinating. All
I
right.
had a
So,
lot of good opportunities, so thank you.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, before we get started, I'd like to just read your bio so listeners who might not be familiar with you can learn a little bit about you and understand your background as we kind of, peel the layers of your career back. So would that be all right if I read your bio?
You bet. Thanks.
All right, good deal. Here we go. Barry Black is a retired FBI special agent with more than 31 years of experience investigating complex white-collar crime and counterterrorism cases. During his career, he served as an FBI SWAT sniper and master bomb technician, responding to some of the most significant events in modern American history, including the Branch Davidian standoff in Waco, Texas, the Oklahoma City bombing, the Atlanta Olympic bombing, the response to 9/11 at Ground Zero, and a thwarted truck bomb plot targeting the U.S. banking system. Barry later became a master instructor for the FBI, training law enforcement and military units across the U.S. and around the globe in explosives response, counterterrorism, and major case investigations. Since retiring from the Bureau in 2019, Barry has continued teaching, speaking, and working with the Oklahoma City National Memorial and the Forensic Science Institute at the University of Central Oklahoma. Throughout his career, Barry received numerous awards and recognition for his service, including induction into the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Hall of Fame. He's testified as an expert in federal court, advised the United States State Department, and he's even co-invented a patented render-safe tool designed to defeat terrorist improvised explosive devices. Today, Barry continues to share lessons learned from decades on the front lines of major investigations and national security events. Barry, I got to say, that is an impeccable bio.
Well, Jim, thank you. It was just a lot of opportunities. The world was changing during my 30 years with the Bureau, and it was just a kind of a crazy time to be in this line of work.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's start out with this. Could you tell listeners why it was you got into law enforcement and why specifically the FBI? What drew you to the Bureau?
I'm going to blame Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. and the FBI, TV, the movies. I grew up 60s and 70s, and
Yep.
it was Jimmy Stewart, the FBI story, and Elliot Ness, the Untouchables. All that was just fascinating to me. And then I learned my little league coach was an FBI agent, and he was a great role model and very patient, answered a lot of questions. And I actually kept in touch with him up through high school and college, and he eventually handed me off to a recruiter, and that was sort of the start of things.
There you go. Like they always say, the rest is history, right?
Exactly.
All right, so you go through the process, you get hired, and you have to attend academy. Now that was in Quantico, Virginia, right?
Right. FBI Academy sits on the Quantico Marine Corps base. It's about 59,000 acres, as I recall, of a military installation. The Bureau's got a corner of that. And I showed up on a Sunday afternoon, walked into the first little conference that evening, looked around, and I was the youngest person in sight. I was 24, and seated there were, Green Berets and former Marines and litigators and CPAs. It was a little daunting, but it's where I wanted to be, and the next 14 weeks were pretty exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I guess, was that a little bit intimidating as a young man going into an environment like that?
It was a little intimidating, yes. As I said, I was fortunate to get in so young because in the 80s, when that occurred, the FBI was in dire need of accountants. And I had actually started my college career as an engineer, but when the recruiter told me they were hiring accountants under the specialty program, which would expedite an entry, I changed majors, actually changed schools, changed cities to go to a better accounting school.
Oh, you were serious.
I was I was pretty serious about it. I was still very fortunate it worked out. But yeah, when I got to that first conference that Sunday evening, it was a little bit of a shock. But great people, great instructors, and the whole experience was outstanding.
Good deal. So you get through the academy, you graduate from there, and then you're given a duty station or your first assignment. How did it work back then? Did you know where you were going to be assigned once you got out of the academy, or could you kind of explain how that worked at the time?
Jim, back then they had it was called the top 12 offices. That was LA, New York, Chicago, Miami, these really large 12 offices, and then basically all other. So we were given the option, uh, pick a top 12 and you may or may not get the city you want, or luck with the draw and go anywhere else in the country. So I opted for the luck of the draw and opened my sealed envelope that about the last week of the academy, and it said Oklahoma City. And I remember my classmates began singing the theme song to Bonanza, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, I had to look at the map to make sure I knew exactly where Oklahoma City was. I had not been out there yet, and I was elated. Yeah, it was a fine place. I packed my bags, moved from Virginia, and showed up in Oklahoma City.
And is that where you reside today?
So I spent my entire career here. I was very fortunate. As you know, the FBI tends to move its agents around, but a lot of my white collar cases were protracted. They took years, and then some other things occurred. Director Freed said if we had been somewhere for a decade or more, he would leave us alone. So I like the type of work, and by the time you get a house and get settled in, if I didn't have to move, I was happy not to. So I opted to stay, and I was fortunate.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Both you and I, as federal agents, we've seen people bounce around the world, sometimes by choice, sometimes by instruction. So it's good to hear that it worked out.
Well, I had the best of both worlds. In Oklahoma, the center of the country, I didn't anticipate going much of anywhere really, but because of the trajectory of the career, Uh, I worked on every continent but Antarctica, so I got to see a good bit of the world and still hang my hat here in Oklahoma.
That's fantastic. And having said that, let's talk a little bit about so we know where your first duty station was. Let's talk just kind of briefly about your assignments throughout your career. And then later, as we go on, we'll discuss in a little bit more detail each assignment. So maybe you could tell us how it started out, white collar crime and your accounting experience. Maybe discuss that briefly, and then the other assignments that you had during your career.
Sure. Well, as an accountant, as I said, I was hired under a specialty program. So I was assured I was going to be working white collar crime. That's bank fraud, bankruptcy fraud, insider trading, money laundering, all the real sexy stuff they do not make movies about, right? But
Well,
um, it,
you beat me to it because I was gonna ask you, some listeners might not be familiar with what white crime is. They clearly know what narcotics cases are or terrorism and undercover work, but white collar crime. But you hit the nail on the head there, and you kind of gave a brief explanation of it. It's not the attention grabbing sexy stuff as you say, but it's very important. It's
well,
very important.
they're usually they can be relatively complicated. I've worked international money laundering where you're following money to different countries, different continents. It can get a little complex, but that's what they hire accountants for. And I enjoyed it. It was what I'd signed up to do, so it was no surprise. But back then, new agents were on probation for a year. They extended that to 2 years now. But as soon as my 1 year probation was up, I wanted to spread my wings a little bit and do something a little bit more like what I'd seen in the movies. And that's when I decided I'd try out for the SWAT team.
Okay, so you tried out for the SWAT team. Could you just, again, briefly, and we'll get into it in a little more detail in a little bit, but how does that work? You decide, hey, there's a SWAT team, it looks interesting. I want to give it a try. How did that unfold for you?
Well, each division in the Bureau has a dedicated SWAT team. It's not a large contingent of agents that is on it, so you have to kind of wait for slots to open. And then there are tryouts, um, selection process. It's a relatively small group, depends on the state or the division you're in. But yeah, it's a little different than accounting. A lot of the guys, the team leader was a former Green Beret. Many of the team leaders were former military operators or former law enforcement that had been on SWAT teams, tactical teams, but just a great group of people. And what I enjoyed particularly about the Bureau and law enforcement as a whole is your peers want you to succeed. So if there's something you're a little short on, they'll work with you. Getting on the team was a great experience, and we did some pretty interesting things, high risk warrants and some high risk arrests, and then I found another little challenge that smaller group on the counter sniper team or sniper observer team, a little smaller, and again I was looking for a challenge. I think we always need to sort of try to stretch our wings a little, so.
Sure.
I talked to the sniper team leader, and again, he was a great guy. He's a former naval officer, a recognized national marksman outside the bureau. And he said just basically what the team leader had said. If that's something you want to try to do, I'll work with you. And he did, and I got selected for sniper school. And the first major deployment as a sniper was the Branch Davidian standoff in Waco in '93.
Wow, what a way to launch in that aspect of your career.
Right. Well, you learn early, like in so many other vocations. When once you get that specialty certification, folks kind of expect you to know what you're doing, and that was interesting. It was, of course, unprecedented. 51-day standoff, heavily armed compound. Yeah, it was quite an experience.
Yeah. And so again, we're just kind of generally walking through your career here. So you go to SWAT, you focus in a little bit more, you become a sniper and you do that for a while. And then where do you go from there?
Interestingly enough, our team was in the Davidians compound as it was still smoldering. Firefighters were putting the fire out, and a couple of men approached that I didn't recognize. So I stopped and said, "Now, who are you?" And they said, "Well, we're FBI bomb technicians." And I'd been in the bureau for 5 years, and I didn't know we had bomb technicians. It's a
Hmm.
very small program. So I said, "Well, what do you guys do?" And they said they were there in case there were improvised explosive devices in the compound or components of devices. But generally, they explained the FBI certifies all the non-military bomb techs in the country, work very closely with our state and local partners, other federal partners, the military, travel around the world, blow stuff up. And I said, all right, how do you do that? That's what I want to do. And again, just like the other two, they said it's a pretty small group. Less than 2% of agents are FBI bomb techs. But if you want to try
Hmm.
it, I'll help you. And I got to bomb school the following year.
Wow, that's impressive. That is impressive. But before that encounter there where you met those bomb techs initially, did you in your mind did you have any desire to do that type of thing? I mean, and I know you said weren't even aware that there was that program, but did you have any interest in stuff like that?
Well, as a boy, the TV and the movies, the sniper part I was aware of, and so that was sort of a secondary goal. First goal was just get in the FBI. That's what I really
Right.
wanted to do, and if I could get on the SWAT team, and then if I could get to sniper school, I thought, okay, I've arrived. But when I learned about this program, I was, it's pretty amazing to think about the things these men did. And this was back in the 90s. It's changed a lot and changed a lot during my tenure. But no, I had no idea that was even on the horizon.
Hmm.
And that's that challenge is what sort of drew me to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, we kind of laid out your career and the different aspects of it. Let's kind of roll the sleeves up a little bit and get specific about some of these assignments. And we'll start with the white collar. Let's kind of drill down a little bit into that. Tell us, is there specialized training associated with that? You were already an accountant, but is there additional training that the Bureau provides? Could you maybe walk us through a white collar or a fraud type of case and just kind of give listeners an understanding of that, and then maybe a case or two that stands out in your mind that was of great interest that you were involved in?
Sure. The training the Bureau provides is really exceptional. And the squad I was on, we were all accountants, but we would still go to annual training, specialized training. Laws would change. Laws for money laundering, for example, were really just coming on the books. They had historically been targeted for narcotics, but obviously, white collar crime, financial crime, takes advantage of laundering money as well. So these specialized courses were tailored to more white collar crimes, and the training was invaluable. I had one case in particular. It was an insurance company, an offshore insurance company that insured truckers that had had accidents or some other issues where they couldn't get conventional insurance. Premiums were kind of high, but truckers have to have insurance. Well, as it turns out, there was no insurance. They were just taking the premiums and sending it offshore. And
Well,
once it got offshore, they would launder it through different countries. So just literally follow the money. We use things called mutual legal assistance treaties we have no authority overseas, but there are agreements with other countries where I could travel and interview, say, a commissioner of insurance in a court in the Caribbean somewhere, and gain cooperation that way. And through these treaties, we could get access to bank records that domestically we would need a search warrant or subpoena for. So it's learning a little bit about how the rest of the world works. Learned a lot about
mm,
international banking. Fascinating case. We got the guys convicted, and that was that.
And you brought up a great point there, Barry. I think people watch television and movies and they see the FBI agent bounce around the world and, go to Hong Kong or the Soviet Union or wherever. And, they're doing their job and they're arresting people overseas. You can't just run roughshod through other countries. You need cooperation with law enforcement in these other countries, right?
Oh, absolutely. And frankly, you need that cooperation here. We've seen that currently. Federal law supersedes other laws in this country, but sometimes there is some conflict. But on that personal level is where things get done. And then when you extend that to an international venue, our embassies, we work closely with the regional security officers and the ambassadors to engage our international partners, which is really why I enjoyed working with the State Department's Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program and NATO later on in my career.
Yes. As I listen to you, like I told you prior to our recording here, I'm just on the edge of my seat listening, to some of your experiences here because I was a federal agent as well, and I just didn't do as much international travel as like you did per se. And after the fact, I kind of kicked myself and think, gosh, maybe I should have done that. And especially now I feel that way, listening to some of your adventures and your cases.
Well, it's nothing I did special, Jim. I was just is the right place, right time. As I transitioned through my career, I, I was on the SWAT team and doing white collar work. And then when I became a bomb technician, I was kind of juggling all three, which that just doesn't last long. There's too
Yeah.
much to do, particularly as a sniper and a bomb technician. So when after 9/11, the Bureau moved to the Joint Terrorism Task Force kind of design, because I was a hazmat technician and a bomb technician, already a weapons of mass destruction first responder, I was assigned to the task force. And then we had what's called a worldwide rapid deployment team, which was designed to go abroad. So I was just in the right place at the right time and had a lot of amazing opportunities to do things I really never dreamed were possible.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And talking about white collar cases. I just don't think the general public grasps the severity of these types of cases, and the large dollar amounts, and that this is something that happens every day. I think the people, folks can turn on the news and they see, drug cases and drug trafficking and drug smugglers and vessels being, targeted, and they see immigration, the current state of immigration today. But I just don't think that they're aware of the severity of these fraud cases. I mean, am I right there that it's a prevalent thing that
Oh,
goes
it's
on consistently that generates massive income for these criminals?
Oh, absolutely. We used to say you can steal more with a briefcase and a pen than you can with a gun. And technology now with the internet, there's a case now involving Bitcoin. Huge sums of money can be transferred with the click of a mouse into just these black holes that there are usually some back doors for tracing some of those transactions. But the world's much more complicated. And even the narco terrorists and drug traffickers, they're after money and they have to move that money somewhere where they can use it. So being able to trace those funds, whether it's the IRS or the Bureau, that's an integral part of getting to the head of the snake.
Yeah, and Barry, that's another great point that you make there. Just like law enforcement and federal law enforcement has accountants that specialize in detecting these crimes. These criminal organizations and drug trafficking organizations also employ professionals that are accountants and that type of thing. So, it's almost as if you're trying to counteract, those criminals almost in the same position as you.
Sure. Like some of the two of the largest white collar cases I had, uh, it was a litany of subsidiaries, some of them offshore, and I specifically targeted the comptroller or the chief financial officer because they were both CPAs in each instance, and they had signed these documents that the SEC relied on or the IRS relied on, or just banks. And so that leaves them with you've got their signature. And some of these interviews went for hours and hours until they realized we could show what they knew or should have known. And we were able to encourage them to switch sides basically. And they ended up testifying for us, which is critical because they literally knew where the skeletons were.
Yeah. Again, great point. I think most successful, it seems, most or a lot of successful federal investigations rely on sources or cooperators, and that's a great example right there. So
Yeah,
yeah, great
it's all
point.
about interview skills, and we at the academy you mentioned earlier that we had specific courses in interview techniques, and it's something that is a perishable skill now. A lot of people are just used to texting or email, and you lose that personal touch. But body language, the way people, where they look when you're talking to them, just little clues can help you if you can get face to face.
Yep, 100%. So you establish you plant your or you build your foundation there with the bureau, and you've worked these types of cases for a while, and then you decide there's something more. I want to do something more, and then that's when you go and you try out for SWAT, and then you transition into the sniper position. Can you tell us about that? Um, um, the training for that, how long training is? Do you uh, quarterly train? That type of thing, and then maybe discuss a case or two of interest where you were involved with SWAT and or as a sniper.
Sure. Times have changed, and so the Bureau has changed. Back then, these other duties were literally collateral. So if you were a bank robbery agent or a white collar agent and made the team, that was an extra duty. So we would train as we could. There was no hard mandate for training then. But as the world changed, these teams became much more specialized and much more rigorous training standards as far as how often and what was required. Of course, we shot a lot, we rappelled, we did helicopter work, we worked with canines. It was great, but it has, I think, only gotten better just as the need and the environment has changed.
Yeah, I would imagine. And also I would imagine, and this isn't a jab, so don't take it this way. An accountant transitioning to the SWAT team, you had to catch some grief from your coworkers, the Green Berets that you mentioned, and those types of personalities. Did you get a little bit of that when you were transitioning into
Well,
SWAT?
at least I could help them with their vouchers. That was the thing, right? Uh,
That's a great point.
no, the folks on the team, and later, there were females that did a wonderful job. They're just good people, and
Mhm.
everybody has a skill. Everybody brings a skill set to a small unit like that, and it's that cohesion that makes a good team. So yeah, we all had backgrounds, and they were diverse, but you come together in that training mold and learn each other, and it's a cohesive unit, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. And as a regular agent, for example, as a special agent with the Bureau that's not assigned to SWAT, you routinely qualify with your firearms, right? So probably quarterly, if you have a handgun, you qualify with that, and if you are assigned a long gun, you qualify with that, and you do training. I would assume as a SWAT agent, that training aspect increases. You're going to train more often. Is that right?
Well, absolutely. So each agent, as you said, would qualify quarterly. The FBI shoots a lot. We have a strong budget, and that's a critical training component. It's something you hope you never have to go to, but it's part of what law enforcement does. That quarterly training is required for every agent, and then the special teams have additional qualifications that are separate and apart from the regular agent population. So um, there's a lot to it. And back when it was a collateral duty, you still had your regular cases to work too. So it was a
Hmm.
commitment to volunteer for these teams.
Hmm. What time frame was it roughly or approximately that you were on the SWAT team? Was it the 90s? Was it uh, late 80s or what time frame are we talking?
So I got in the Bureau in 88. Probation was about a year. By the time everything settled out, I was on the team for about 7 years. A couple of those overlapped with when I was a bomb tech as well. So 7 years in the tactical part, and then I spent 26 years as a bomb technician.
Oh, wow. Sticking with the SWAT still before we transition on. Back in that time frame of law enforcement in the 90s, was there, for lack of a better term, cross training, where you would train with other federal agencies and their SWAT teams, or you would train with state and local SWAT teams, or was it compartmentalized where you would just train yourselves? Does that make sense? That
Sure.
question?
Yeah, so the FBI is still set up in regions. So there are regional responses, and our team would train with the other teams within our region. That's how the Oklahoma City team ended up at Waco. That was part of that mutual aid or mutual response group. But yeah, we worked with military, whether it's their special response teams, Office of Special Investigations for the Air Force. Here in Oklahoma, we have a number of very large nationally critical installations, both Army and Air Force. So we had a great working relationship with them, and then our state and local partners as well. The tempo has changed. You look at things like Uvalde, these events that highlight the need. It was a federal team that ended that issue in Uvalde. Um, but no, it's a partnership. State, local, federal, ideally would work together, and we had a really good working relationship throughout the state of Oklahoma.
Okay. And maybe you answered this question already, but you discussed working regionally and training regionally. As a member of a SWAT team, were there opportunities where you would travel outside of your region for assignments? Say you were in Oklahoma. Were there ever cases where there was a necessity for multiple SWAT teams? So you might go to Massachusetts for an enforcement operation, or you may go to, San Diego. Did that happen?
Absolutely. So the regional footprint, each division has a SWAT team. Those SWAT teams are broken up into mutually supporting regions, but then the reach back capability is the hostage rescue team out of Quantico. They're full-time, exceptionally well trained, dedicated for high risk HR hostage rescue type of things. So in an event, Waco is a perfect example. That was too large for the team in the immediate area to handle. So our team and others went. You think back to the Rodney King LA riots, the Oklahoma City SWAT team was assigned to LA during those
Wow.
events. It's a national asset. Obviously, it's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, so we
Mhm.
can go anywhere. We'll send. There have been occasions where we've sent teams to Puerto Rico, when issues arose there. So yeah, it's available for use anywhere in the country.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was curious about that. And your involvement with the SWAT is you were a sniper. What can you just briefly tell listeners other specialties or positions within a SWAT team? Maybe like a breacher or any other positions.
Sure. So obviously the snipers are eyes and ears, usually, ideally not seen, provide intel, usually put in advance of some movement to try to give the commander or the command element actionable, real-time situational awareness. And as the team goes, then there'll be an assault team, which will generally have at least one, if not two, breachers trained and familiar with a number of type of breaching techniques. And then, of course, all of the team members are highly confident in close quarter combat. Um, So yeah, it's there are different specialties within, but those are sort of
Sure.
the broadest categories.
Okay. So in your time there, like we said in the beginning, you were involved in multiple high profile cases or situations. Could you maybe discuss, and Waco was one of these, correct, when you were in SWAT? Could you
Correct.
just maybe, what you can discuss, could you maybe just tell us, how you found out about Waco? What, how you got there, how long you were there, and what you primarily were involved in during that incident?
Sure, Jim. It was I had just gotten married and my wife and I were unpacking from our honeymoon and we had pagers back then, but she
Hmm.
and I were unpacking and one of her bridesmaids called the hard line. We had home phones then. There were no
Yeah.
real cell phones available. And she said, are you guys okay? We're like, well, sure, we're fine. We hadn't seen the news. We didn't know what had happened. But she said four agents had been killed and she didn't know much more. So I flipped on
Mm.
CNN, which was really the only news channel back then,
Right.
and watched the coverage as it unfolded. Well, the pager warbled. It was the numeric SWAT call out. And my wife said, well, what's going to happen? How does this work? And I told her I'm going to pack for 3 days. I said this will probably be over before we even get there, but I'll call you when I get to Waco. I think it'll, 3 days, which is pretty standard call out, really.
Hmm.
Uh, Got down there. The FBI had already assumed tactical command from the other agency that had ran into the issue there. And we were briefed by a team member from that special response team, just as far as the type of fire, the ferocity of the fire, and kind of what we could expect, because we thought we were going to go down and just, there would be some kind of tactical resolution.
When you say
But
fire, you mean gunfire at this point,
gunfire.
right? Okay.
Right. Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
The
Yep.
operator that briefed us from the other federal agency, he had taken a shotgun blast from an upper story window. His goggles were cracked. He had his Kevlar was torn from the pellets. So it brought a sense of reality pretty quickly.
I would imagine. Okay.
Intel, of course, is always important. We were told they had 50 caliber rifles, which could shred any vehicle we had. Nobody had armor back then. So we borrowed some Bradley fighting vehicles from Fort Hood. Again, it goes back to relationships. And we walked down this very long dirt road on the safe side of that armor and set up positions, and it turned into a 51-day slog.
Wow. And were you there 51 days?
Yes, yeah. Once time wore on, and it was obvious this was going to be a protracted event, HRT, was deployed. And in these situations, well, this had never happened. So this was
Mhm.
truly unprecedented. But as a sniper, for instance, you can't really stay on that rifle for hours at a time. So the regional snipers, such as myself, were assigned to spell and support the HRT snipers. So as time went on, I would be transported via a Bradley fighting vehicle to it was called CR2 as a location sort of behind the compound, and would work with an HRT sniper for long periods of time. We would sleep there and be resupplied periodically. It was a strange uh, it was a strange 51 days.
Were you, did you stay in hotels in the area at that time, or how, did you have trailers, or how did that work?
Yeah, Jim, this was a logistics nightmare. So you can imagine the footprint, there. We stayed in a chain hotel. Now, nobody had government credit cards and there was no electronic transfers. So
Hmm.
we were responsible for our own bills, our own meals, our lodging, because usually it's a 2 or 3 day thing and you come back and fill out the voucher.
And that's
Um,
not too bad, 2 or 3 days.
No, you can do about
Right.
anything for 2 or 3 days, but
Right.
week after week, this turned into something, and the hotels were starting to want their money. So eventually, the bureau sent in a pay trailer just outside the range of that 50 caliber rifle,
Oh,
inside the
man.
perimeter, and it was on Thursdays. We would all queue up, and signed for enough money to pay our expenses. And when we got back to our respective divisions, did the one giant voucher for the whole deployment.
Wow. Wow. So you pack for 3 days, you're there for 51 days, and it ends tragically. Is there, would
Important.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, were you there when the building burned and it all came to conclusion like that?
So that morning, this is the plains of Texas. It was windy. I remember it was very cold at night. It could get very hot in the daytime. But when the fires erupted, the speed with which that fire consumed that entire compound was just phenomenal. Uh, and we learned later, of course, there were three simultaneous fires lit, and accelerants had been spread throughout the compound, which explains how fast it spread. But yeah, that morning, our team went down. It was still smoldering to secure the scene because obviously it's a crime scene. And for transparency, the Texas Rangers were brought in, so we were sort of waiting on them, and that's where I met Jim Norman, that first bomb tech I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into that aspect of your career. You meet there in Waco, and you learn of this program with the FBI and what's available to you. So, kind of walk us through that. You transition from SWAT and sniper into the hazardous devices program as a bomb tech. Just share that with us.
Well, I learned that the FBI certifies all the non-military bomb technicians in the country. There's only one bomb school, and it's the FBI's Hazardous Devices School down at Redstone Arsenal. Just like Quantico, the FBI Academy is on a Marine Corps installation, HDS is on an Army post. So we have a very close relationship with our military partners. But I learned sort of what the Bureau did. There's post-blast investigations, but it's everything you need to know. It's a fantastic school. There are a very small number of FBI bomb technicians or FBI agents get to become bomb technicians. So most people in my HDS class were state and local law enforcement because they were getting certified just as I was getting certified. And it's that continuity of education. Everybody's trained the same, whether you're a county deputy or a city police officer or an FBI agent. You go to the same school, receive the same training, so we're familiar with one another and basically interchangeable in a crisis situation.
Am I understanding that correctly to mean, say, LAPD and NYPD and the FBI has bomb techs, everybody collectively goes to that same, or did at that time, and maybe they
Still
do
do.
still now. Okay. That's their explosives training.
That is the national certification, right?
Wow.
So the FBI certifies each individual bomb technician, and then accredits every non-military bomb squad in the country. So every individual bomb technician goes back to, we call it Redstone or HDS, every 3 years, but the FBI bomb techs go back annually for a little more specialized training. And then we
Mhm.
take that training back to our divisions as sort of a train the trainer.
Okay. Now, when you transitioned to that, did you also work, like we discussed earlier, work regular FBI cases in addition to working explosives, or at some point did you transition to just primarily explosives? How does that work?
Well, the FBI is going to get their money's worth out of you. So
Sure.
all of these teams back in the day were collateral duty. You still had your casework, and then if you're on the SWAT team, you did that in addition. If you're a bomb tech, you did that in addition. So it made for some long days, but it's not work if you love doing it, right? So there came a time when the shooting and the explosives, there's a very small margin for error in both, and I really needed to just pick the bomb technician family was much smaller than the SWAT family, and I chose that. And for me, I think I chose correctly. It was a lot of just timing. The Bureau had gone to Joint Terrorism Task Force models, and as the bomb tech, I was also cross-trained as a hazmat tech, I think I mentioned, and it was just a good fit for me. So I left the accounting work behind, left the tactical work behind, and just concentrated on the counterterrorism mission. And my particular slice of that was the explosives and counter IED. And when the world went crazy with weapons of mass destruction, we had some highly classified training on unconventional weapons. Um, so I became the weapons of mass destruction coordinator and first responder for WMDs, and that was sort of the end of the accounting part.
Gotcha. So, and like you and I were discussing earlier, um, this isn't just a hand grenade or a fertilizer bomb. This is a wide variety of so many things that can do destruction, right?
Sure. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why it's called the hazardous devices school. It's not just explosives. The certified bomb techs, our state and local partners, of course, our military partners have their separate training. Uh, it's can be some type of weapon mass destruction, whether it's chemical, radiological, biological. A bomb technician will be part of the team to go and assess that weapon and then determine what type of render safe uh, tools could be used safely. It's a cat and mouse game. You know, the bad guys, the terrorists and criminals do watch and learn, and they will evolve the types of devices they build to try to defeat our tools, which is how I ended up co-inventing this one tool after the Boston Marathon bombing.
Would you want to discuss the Boston Marathon bombing and that tool, or are you comfortable discussing any of that?
Oh, sure, Jim. It's as I said, it's kind of a cat and mouse game. I was not in Boston. That was an all hands on deck response as well. Bureau, state, local, other federal resources, and of course, it was played out live on TV, like
Hmm.
the O.J. Simpson was back in the day.
Yeah.
But the devices that were used there, um, not necessarily the pressure cookers that detonated near the finish line, but the other devices that the Tsarnaev brothers used in that manhunt were replicated by another group in San Bernardino subsequently. So the FBI tracks trends, and we realized these types of devices were now not a one-off. They were being taught somewhere by somebody, and we didn't have a good tool to defeat them. So one of our we have fantastic scientists, PhDs in all disciplines, and he and I began speaking about a way to defeat these devices, a new type of tool. And I mean, this guy's brilliant, right? I didn't do much to contribute, but we ended up back down in Texas, and we built tens and dozens of very sensitive devices over a 2 week period in their most sensitive configurations so that we could use extreme measures, scientific testing and sampling to determine if this tool would work. And we documented a very high degree of success and received a patent for it, which we immediately gave to the Bureau. And now that tool is available to state, local, and military techs and is being used now.
Wow. That's super impressive going to your knowledge base and experience being able to design and be involved in creating something like that. So that's
Well, as I
super
said, my
impressive.
part was pretty small, but I was pleased to have a little bit in it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's hard, if somebody says, "Hey, give me a general, what's a day like for an FBI agent?" I know it's kind of hard to do that, but is there, and maybe this isn't a fair question, but is there a general or a basic what a bomb technician does on a daily basis?
so
Or you're
yeah,
just essentially responding to incidents, correct? And
well, I
training.
I was fortunate being an FBI bomb tech. Again, there are only I think well just a few hundred. There are not many,
Oh, I
and
didn't
we
realize
are
that.
yeah we're coordinators basically. So we're trained. We're bomb technicians. Most are hazmat technicians and WMD response certified. But we rely on our state and local partners heavily. They're force multipliers. There are maybe 700 bomb squads in the country, a lot of bomb techs that are trained by the Bureau. And we go back for supplemental training 3 times as often. So we bring that training back. So a lot of the time is spent working with our state and local partners, working with our military partners to ensure things are ready. There's a lot of equipment that requires maintenance and upkeep, and some of it has now gotten extremely complicated. When I first started, some of the tools were homemade, so it wasn't very high tech. But
Hmm.
now there's a lot of technology involved. So if it's the day in the life question, it's a lot of preparedness. It's sort of like a fireman. You have to make sure your equipment's ready because that
Sure.
call may come in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Now, did you say that you certainly did countrywide travel with this? You did international travel as well with this, correct?
Yes, yes. Again, I was just quite fortunate because of the types of cases I had worked. You'll remember when there wasn't a codified plan that we now know as the Incident Command System, ICS.
Mhm.
Things just happened as organically as they could. But
Right.
as the Oklahoma City response and the Waco response, and I was sent to Atlanta after that bombing. Nothing I did special. It's just I saw a lot of things in a lot of different vantage points, and it offered me opportunities to train other friendly nations, partner nations, as they begin to have major events. And again, as terrorism grew, sort of the same thing. I'd seen a few of these major, relatively complicated events that we had some success in. The Bureau had some success in resolving. And so I was able to work with State Department, which handles most things overseas. They have a program called the Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program. So I would go as a subject matter expert for State Department and assess our partner nations' abilities to respond to different types of terrorist threat, and then make recommendations as to what kind of equipment and training they need to bolster their response capability.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Is there, having been involved in so many different scenarios and cases, is there, in your mind, one or two, I don't even know if this is a fair question, one or two explosives or hazardous materials related case that really stands out in your mind that you were involved in? And if so, why is that? Does that make sense? Like you've dealt
Well,
with Oklahoma City bombing, Olympic Park 9/11. What in your career stands out the most to you and why?
I think first would be the bombing here in Oklahoma City. Uh, these events sadly recur and are occurring with more frequency now. And I've been to a number of them, but it's different when you know people there. My wife was in the Murrah building. She left the building 2 minutes before detonation. Uh,
That day, your
that
wife was
morning,
in.
she drove in front of the truck bomb, the BBID, and the overpressure pushed her vehicle. She thought she had driven into a giant hole. It's grace of God she's still here. I knew people that didn't survive the blast. So knowing people, being that close, changes perspective. But obviously, this was a federal case, is the largest act of domestic terrorism still. So it was the FBI's jurisdiction, but there were only 2 FBI bomb technicians in the state, myself and that man that got me in the program. So you can't fail to go to work just because it's hard.
Right.
So that obviously would be one of the those that stay in the forefront of my mind. And then I remember flying into New York after 9/11. The plane went silent, and that was a 14-acre just hellscape. It was still smoking. Um, so that was I don't know the better word than memorable, but those are things
Yeah.
you don't unsee.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Which of those cases? I think I know the answer. Would had the biggest impact on you personally? Would it be Oklahoma because you were right there and your wife was in that building beforehand, or was it something else?
Well, Jim, is probably way more than you want to know. As far as personal goes, I was diagnosed with an exceptionally rare form of cancer after my 9/11 deployment.
Oh,
Uh, there have been more people die from exposures related to 9/11 than were killed in the day of the attacks. I was blessed and fortunate. After a 6-hour surgery, they were able to excise this really bizarre type of tumor that took 3 pathologists to figure out. So, on a personal level, there's that. But
hmm,
I mean, Waco, one of the last little girls that got released, I've carried her to a Health and Human Services lady. I still remember how she looked. 30 years of doing this, you see things and you don't
right.
forget them. But each one leaves a mark and has some weight with it, maybe in just kind of a different degree or different format.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Is there, before we move on and maybe talk about your book and a couple other things, is there anything that I didn't mention that you feel is important that we should cover, or is there anything that we should circle back on and cover? Or do you think,
Oh, I just appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I loved my job. It's an honor to serve the country. I was just going to retire and fish after 31 years or try to learn to play golf, but I had the opportunity to teach at a university, so I do that now, and a lot of the students are going on to be that next generation. So I enjoy that. You have to have something to do. I went to school at Alabama, and Bear Bryant famously said if he quit coaching, he would die, and he died 6 weeks later. So I'm going to keep doing something for a while.
keep plugging away?
That's right.
Absolutely. If you could sit down with a new FBI agent that's just starting out, is there one or two pieces of advice that you might give them that nobody told you when you started out? Is that a fair question?
That's a great question. I think what folks need to realize is that possibilities are really endless. If you're willing to do the work, very few things are free in this life. You have to pursue what you want. But I tend to believe if you put the work in and stay with it, sometimes you don't get it the first go round.
Hmm.
That accounting test that got me in the bureau, I did not pass the first time, so I'm glad I didn't give up.
Yeah,
But yeah, just a little stick to itiveness works a long way.
gotcha. I agree wholeheartedly. You mentioned your teaching, that you do some teaching, and you also wrote a book. Tell us about that. Tell us about your book. What motivated you to write the book, and just what's it about?
Well, it's called Hazardous Devices: Memoir of an FBI Bomb Technician, Accountant, and Sniper. Uh, it's just a compilation of 30 years of notes on napkins and the backs of envelopes. We mentioned at the top of the show, I wanted to be an agent since I was a kid. And when I got my orders to Quantico, one of my very best friends from childhood, she knew me well enough. She said, "You're going to forget all this, so just start writing it down." And I did. I would just sort of jot little things down as my career changed. I would be in transit for sometimes 30 hours getting from some far flung place, and had a lot of time in airports and on airplanes. And I just sort of wrote down where I was and what we did and why we were there, and stuck that in a drawer. And I retired in 2019. Had a little more time than I was used to, so I strung them together in stories. But then I had no idea what to do. I'd never really thought about a book per se. I thought maybe my son one day would like to see this. But the publisher, McFarland, contacted me to write a forensic science textbook, since that's the institute I'm
Wow.
teaching with.
Wow, that's pretty
Well,
impressive.
I'd never thought about writing a textbook, and frankly, that seemed like a lot of work for an old retired guy. But I said, look, we can think about that, but I do have this, compilation of stories if you would like to take a look. And I really wasn't expecting a lot, but they were interested and asked for a few more, and eventually said they would publish it, and I'm thrilled. It came out really just the first of this year.
Fantastic. Where's the best place for listeners who would be interested in reading your book? Where's the best place for them to find that?
Well, I'm honored to say, coming up on February 18th, the National Bombing Memorial, the Memorial Museum here in Oklahoma City is going to have a book launch. So if you're in Oklahoma City, that's going to be a great place. But
Oh,
otherwise,
absolutely.
it's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, really wherever books are sold. And I'm hopeful people enjoy it.
Absolutely. You also have a website that talks about
Right.
yourself and
Well, in retirement have done some corporate and other speaking engagements for other entities. It's barryblackokc.com. It's got a little background, and you can get the book there if you're having trouble finding it on
oh,
Amazon.
excellent. Yeah,
But yeah, as I said, I want to stay busy. I've always enjoyed having my finger in the pie a little bit, and I enjoy the speaking opportunities. I love the teaching part. And I think the book's going to kind of turn into a little hobby for a while. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
fantastic. Fantastic. Do you have any final comments before we conclude today, or do you think you pretty much covered all the bases?
Well, it's probably more than you wanted to know, Jim. I
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity to be with you. I had a career that was really, I mean, not much of my making. It was just sort of the right place and the right time. And opportunities exist if you're willing to chase them down. So I would say that's my advice.
Yep, for sure. Well, Barry, hey, I want to thank you so much for just taking the time to share your career with us and talking about the things you did and the things that you saw. And I highly suggest to listeners that found this interesting to read more about it in your book, much greater detail and you elaborate further on those things. So I encourage folks to get a hold of that book and give it a read. So very great talking to you today. Thank you for your 31 years of service. I appreciate you.
Pleasure's mine, Jim. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Well, let me transition to podcast listeners out there. I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank you for listening to Barry Black today. And just remind you to like, follow, share, and subscribe my social media. You'll find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and my website, rtrspodcast.com. So, as always, thank you, and everybody stay safe out there. Thanks again, Barry.
Thank you.
The Right to Remain Silent podcast is brought to you by Streetwise 360 Studios. I would like to again thank today's guest for sharing the story right here on the podcast. Please remember to like, follow, share, and recommend us so that I can continue to bring you high caliber guests sharing their experiences, just like we heard today. If your law enforcement agency is interested in training provided by Streetwise 360, or if you know someone that has an interesting law enforcement story to share, please contact me via the website, www.streetwise-360.com, www.streetwise-360.com.